Hatch in the summertime in Kent. There's no better place to hold a race, and that was the case for the recent rounds of the Avon Tyres National Formula Ford Championship. Brands Hatch is the birthplace of Formula Ford and also the host of the legendary Formula Ford Festival at the end of every season in October. Some drivers here will be treating it as a bit of a prelude, whilst others were more focused on the championship fight, including this man, Ross Martin. He headed into the weekend as the championship leader, but he looked at the skies on Saturday morning, the weather took a turn for the worst. After the recent heatwave in the UK, the weather started to see rain come down in buckets, and after a wet qualifying session in the morning, the circuit was still saturated by the start of race number 1. Rory Smith took pole position with Neil McLellan alongside him on the front row of the grid, and James Clark and Ross Martin on the second row. Ross Martin from the line immediately knew he'd made a wrong setup choice as cars started to file past him in the opening few laps, what turned out to be one of his worst races of the season. Into Paddock Hill Bend they went for the first time, and it was McLellan from the front row of the grid who got the better start from Rory Smith on the front row, with Cole Becker also moving through into second place, the young American hassling the back of the Kevin Mill Spectrum into Druids and throughout the opening parts of the race. Further round the race, Jonathan Brown found himself battling over 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th with teammate James Clark, Rory Smith and the young American Aaron Jeanson. Aaron was having one of his best weekends in National Formula Ford so far, and the Oldfield Motorsport driver made the most of his Van Diemen and put himself up into a personal best 3rd place and his first ever podium finish. Then came a decisive move later round in that first race. Neil McLellan running wide, running too deep into Surtees, allowing Cole Becker to squeeze through into a lead which he would end up never to lose. He would go on to take his second National Formula Ford victory, one that would certainly put him closer in the title fight to this man, Ross Martin. In the end, a spin and again that wrong setup choice put him down in the mid-pack, battling with drivers who are way off the pace and way off him in the championship battle. He ended up in that first race in a very lonely 10th, and that will certainly be one of his drop scores come the end of the season when the championship comes to a close. So, Cole Becker wins the first race with McLellan, Jeanson, Clark and Smith in the top 5, Ross Martin back down in 10th, and he will have work to do from the second race later on this afternoon. Jamie Sharp also set the fastest lap of the race, but he sadly retired early on, but he also lost out in the closing stages. So, the question is now, as Sunday and right conditions turn on, is it going to be better fortunes for Ross Martin? Let's find out with Lloyd on the grid.
Race 2 in the Avon Tyres National Formula Ford 1600 Championship, and Spike Colbeck is on pole position. Spike, great race yesterday, on pole position and maintaining a gap ahead of Ross. How do you feel?
It feels pretty good. We pulled out with a good finish yesterday. A solid win in the wet. Kept it clean with Neil and drove away.
Brilliant, congratulations. We'll look forward to meeting you later on. It's over to Scott Woodwiss to take you through the race action.
Thanks, Lloyd. The cars are making their way around onto the grid for race 2, with the grid set as a result of race number 1. So Cole Becker and McLellan line up on the front row of the grid from Jeanson and Clark on row 2, Rory Smith and that Jonathan Brown from Morgan Quinn and Max Maserati, and then Jamie Thorburn and that man Ross Martin starting back in 10th with a lot of work to do. McPherson and Down are on the 6th row of the grid ahead of Henry Charles and Scott Huntley. Nicole Woods and Jamie Sharp come next, with Alan Quartermain rounding out the 17-car grid for this weekend here at Brands Hatch. So thankfully, the weather conditions have taken a much better turn, with sunshine and brighter skies compared to the rain of race number 1. Spike Cole Becker will be going for his 3rd victory of the season, his 2nd of the weekend, but never count out Neil McLellan or his Cliff Dempsey teammates. Red lights are on for race number 2 at Brands Hatch. We're on board with James Clark as the lights go out and we are racing here in Kent. It's a decent few start from the first few rows. We're down towards Paddock Hill Bend for the first time, and immediately this man Ross Martin is not hanging around. He's got a much better setup on the Team Dolan Van Diemen, and is already scything around the outside of both Jamie Thorburn and Max Maserati. Meanwhile at the front, speaking of sailing around the outside, there goes Neil McLellan. There's a little bit of elbowing going on between himself and Cole Becker on the exit of Druids. It's almost put McLellan down to 3rd place, but not for long it hasn't, because back up into 2nd. Into Graham Hill Bend he goes at the expense of James Clark. It's a good start for Aaron Jeanson also after his cracking result yesterday, after he picked up 3rd place in the adverse conditions. Now Spike Cole Becker leading the way up through Surtees into McLaren and Clearways for the first time. So it's Ray from Spectrum, from Ray, that's the top 3. And now Ross Martin is already up to 7th place off the grid, having started back in 10th. He's now on the tail of what looks to be Jonathan Brown. So here's now James Clark looking to make a dive down the outside line. He's not scared, is he? But has to hold back for the time being as McLellan fancies to look for the lead through Paddock Hill Bend. It's the view from James Clark. He's He's come agonisingly close time and time again to his first national Formula Ford victory. Is Brands Hatch finally going to be the weekend if he gets that first top step visit for Cliff Dempsey in a national championship race? Well, there's Aaron Jeanson, the young American. He is on the tail of Clark for 4th position. The rest of the field goes streaming through. Back on board with Ross Martin on the tail of Rory Smith. And ooh, look at that, he's a little bit out of shape there as they come up through Cooper. I'm not sure there was contact. I don't think there's anyone directly behind him as they turn up through McLaren and Clearways. Aaron Jeanson running a little wide in the background, but that might just allow James Clark back up the inside for 3rd place. It might also see the American drop back a few more spots as they head down at the pit straight towards paddock. And there's McLaren looking pretty racy, looking to the outside line. He's not afraid to make the outside move. He has to. Colbecker shows him the edge of the road. He's not afraid to get his elbows out either. But McLaren might get the run on the exit up the inside line, and Colbecker again pushes him to the inside. But McLaren's not taking no for an answer, squeezing up the inside. They almost rub wheels, but they've kept it clean, and McLaren has got through. So despite the protestations of Colbecker, it now means that it's Neil McLaren into the lead. But look at what's behind him. It's the seething mob from Ireland behind him, because all 3 Cliff Dempsey cars are stacked up. As here come the cavalry, both James Clark and Jonathan Brown. And Neil McLaren must look at his mirrors and thinking, oh no, not 1, not 2, but all 3 of them. You've got to be joking me. But he's got to try and lead from the front here. It's not a place he's unfamiliar with. He's led so many times in so many Formula Ford races back in his native Scotland, and also at national level. He's also been a leader at one point in races in the Formula Ford Festival. He knows this place as much as he knows Knock Hill. So he will do everything he can to hold on for this lead in race number 2. Here's the scrap for 5th going on just behind that leading quartet. This is Ross Martin on the back of Rory Smith, who took a victory earlier this season at Snetterton. Ross Martin has won at least 5 races so far this year. Indeed, love to add towards his tally a bit more, but still in 6th position is not going to do it. Thankfully, they've managed to correct the setup errors they made yesterday when it was in much adverse conditions, when the rain came down and the track was fairly saturated. They've put that right. And now he's up in the leading pack, up on the leading pace. They come up through Clark Curve. Jonathan Brown sat in 4th position. He already has a race win to his name as well. That was the first race at Alton Park, if I'm correct. As they come into Paddock Hill Bend, and James Clark's not hanging around. He wants that first National Formula Ford win. And Spike just opens the door and says, after you, James. He might not be so welcoming here as they come up into Druids Bend. They come side by side again. Once more, the Cliff Dempsey cars are going into combat. I know I say it several times, but watching this will certainly be giving Cliff Dempsey heart palpitations here, because all 3 of them are going into combat here between each other. They've got to realise they have to stop fighting amongst each other and keep on pressing the back of Neil McLaren's car. They have to start working together. And he's told Jonathan Brown, though, around the outside through Surtees and into McLaren and Clearways, and also stack it behind him as there's a little bit of rubbing of wheels. James Clark gets edged out wide by Jonathan Brown, and here comes both Rory Smith and this man Ross Martin. Ross is bump drafting Rory Smith down the pit straight. There's not many single-seater championships you can do where you can bump draft your rival in front of you, but Smith has his way blocked. He's always going to make it 3 abreast, and I'm glad he didn't, because that would have ended in disaster into Paddock Hill Bend. You never go 3 abreast into Paddock Hill because it never ends well. Up towards Druids, it's side by side for what is now 5th position. And up into the hairpin. That's now up to, yes, 4th position actually now for, looks like, Jonathan Brown. There is James Clark, who's fell behind Rory Smith. And now Ross Martin fancies a crack at the Cliff Dempsey man. So I think James Clark's dreams of taking a National Formula Ford victory in this race appear to have evaporated somewhat to a certain extent. He'll try and press on as hard as he can as they turn up through Clark Curve and onto the pit straight once more. It's very overcast, but it is dry at least, so it means that the drivers know exactly which way to go on setup. Now James Clark fancies a crack on the back of Rory Smith to repass him, but up the inside line. He didn't count for Ross Martin making a dive into Paddock Hill Bend, and that he did. And James Clark loses yet another place into Paddock Hill Bend. James must be kicking himself thinking, come on James, get with the programme. You were in a position to possibly take the lead, now you're back in 6th. Come on, sort it out. That'll be himself talking to him, I think. And Aaron Jeanson fancies to get back into the mix. The black car at the back of the field, at the back of the group, in what is now 7th place, fancies to add to James Clark's evident misery by relieving him yet another place if he can. Martin may have to think again about dropping James Clark, because he's trying to go with him on the run through Clark Curve as the road starts to open out onto the pit straight again. James James Clark now goes from being the hunted to the hunter in the slipstream, tucked underneath Ross Martin's gearbox. So is Kohlbecker as he looks to the outside of McLennan into turn 1. But McLennan is making that Spectrum the widest Formula Ford in the venue at the moment, under the bridge and into Druids. They close back in. It's a bit of a ever-decreasing early apex that you take into Druids. You sort of brake and brake with the front of the car pointing towards the apex. You then sort of square off the corner and then get the car nice and early on the throttle to power your way out through the exit and down the hill towards Graham Hill Bend. Jonathan Brown in third place. He's managed to catch the top 2 now. He's pulled away from the shenanigans happening behind him. They turn their way up through the top of the circuit. Cleveland continues to hold the tide back of Cliff Dempsey attacks. And it looks as though, possibly, we're going to see another one here from Kohlbecker, and he's almost trying to put McLennan's car in the middle of the road to try and force him to go one way then the other. But again, McLennan just neatly holds the racing line, turns his way into paddock, uses the curb on the exit. Ross Martin, meanwhile, further behind. There's 2 Cliff Dempsey cars going in attack. One is being attacked, and there was James Clark saying to Ross Martin, look, stop fighting me. Let's work together and try and catch Rory Smith and then go after the top 3. I'm not quite sure Ross Martin's got the message yet. He's more focused on getting himself more points towards the championship. Try and close in on the 2 men in the top 2 positions, Neil McLennan and Spike Kohlbecker, who are at the moment his biggest rivals in the championship. Of course, the National Formula Fords will be back here in September for the finale. This is kind of a prelude to the festival, if you like. So they'll get 3 cracks at the whip here at Brands Hatch for some of these guys. They'll get these rounds here this weekend, the finale, which could be all important in September, and then of course the centrepiece event for not only Formula Fords but the BRSCC, which is the Formula Ford Festival, and James Clark pulling off a festival-esque move and sideways on the exit. There's a little rubber wheels between James Clark and Ross Martin. But how about that for car control? That is typical Formula Ford. A brilliant move from James Clark up the inside line. Ross Martin must be thinking, how on earth did you save that on the exit of Paddock Hill Bend? That was nearly impossible. Talk about high and wide and handsome. That was certainly high and wide, and my goodness, that was handsome as well in terms of a pass. We go back to the leaders between Neil McLennan, Spike Kohlbecker and Jonathan Brown. It is Scotland versus So it's the Spectrum leading, the 2 Rays in 2nd and 3rd place. And once again, Kohlbecker is getting a bit familiar with the gearbox of McLennan's car as they turn into Paddock Hill Bend. Through the right-hander, up the hill now towards Druids once again. Top 3 stacked up as they head into the hairpin. A long, ever-arcing 180-degree hairpin, and they plunge down the hill towards the left-hander at the bottom of the crest. Wonder if possibly Jonathan Brown is starting to get a little bit racier than his teammates at the moment and may start to make designs on 2nd place if Kohlbecker slips up and tries to make a move here on McLennan that doesn't come off. And into clearways through the top of the circuit up through Park Curve that just swings around back off the pit straight. A little wide, little wiggle on the exit curb there from Kohlbecker. You can see he's pushing, but so far McLennan is just keeping cars behind at bay. He knows how to defend. He's absorbing every single attack, every single little bit of pressure that gets applied. Here's further back down the order. This is a scrap that's going on between Max Maserati battling with Jamie Thorburn. Good to see Max back in the field. He's now having a good scrap at the head of the Clubman class. Now look back to our battle for 1st and 2nd place, but Max Maserati was battling there with Jamie Thorburn and also James Sharp, and I think also Michael Pearson. Here they are. Quartet head their way down towards Graham Hill Bend with Maserati in control. Maserati's previous memories of the Formula Ford Festival had an accident in the final, which delayed him for quite a while, but thankfully he was not back to fighting fitness a day later. He's now back up to fighting fitness, battling with Jamie Thorburn, who in turn didn't count on Jamie Sharp knocking him a door and saying, excuse me Jamie, up the inside I come. In fact, more than that, he squeezed him off onto the road. Goodness me, Jamie Thorburn's off the road into the gravel trap, and I'm not quite sure that Thorburn would have appreciated that move from Sharp. I think any thoughts of being on his Christmas card list may have been evaporated with that move, I think, but Jamie Thorburn ambles his way back onto the circuit, I'm sure, rather aggrieved at that, and who can blame him? Here's his fellow Scott Ross Martin, who is still battling away with James Clark. Again, head into and out of it, down the short Cooper Straight, but be careful that they don't push the limits of the track too much, because of course one of the Motorsport Vision circuits, which Dr. Jonathan Palmer has installed pressure plates on the exits of certain corners, particularly Paddock Hill Bend, Druids and Graham Hill Bend, and if you transgress and activate the pressure plate, it sends a picture back to race control, and there is basically concrete evidence that you have transgressed the track limits. Is now looking for second place up the inside of his teammate goes Jonathan Brown. Despite Goldbeck has no choice, he has to open the door and capitulate and let him through. That was a bold, decisive pass from Jonathan Brown. I'm not quite sure Goldbecker expected it. I think he knew that Brown was there, but the Irishman squeezing up into second place and thinking, right, you couldn't get past Neil, let me try this one on for size. Watch and learn, sunshine. Up to the left-hander at Graham Hill Bend. Now it's Jonathan Brown's turn to put the pressure on. Up towards Surtees. Of course, this is the corner here yesterday in race 1 where McLennan ran wide in the wet conditions and let Colbecker through. This time in the bone dry, not so much of a problem. And look behind this three, because also Rory Smith has not only been caught by James Clark, but also in there too now once again is Ross Martin. So it is now a 6-car train for the lead. There's the battle of a fourth going on between Smith and Clark, as it was nose to tail for the lead into Paddock Hill Bend. Looking to the outside line there as that Colbecker goes back up the inside of his teammate. They are side by side on the exit. Cliff Dempsey will be watching between his fingers at this battle, as Ross Martin now has a look down the outside for 5th place on James Clark. He tries to squeeze down the outside, but if he can stay there, it would have given him the inside line for the next corner, which is Graham Hill Bend, as Brown slops back in front of his teammates. So the battle that continues to rage between the Cliff Dempsey stablemates is only benefiting one man, and that's the man in front, Neil McLennan, who'll be laughing to himself thinking, just keep battling, boys, I'll just take the lead all by myself, and I'll just take this one to dominate from start to finish, shall I? I think the Cliff Dempsey guys have realised they've got to stop squabbling, and they have to do something about the man in P1 if they want to try and get themselves onto the top step of the podium and deliver yet more points for Cliff Dempsey Racing. Could be yet more points on offer here, as now we see James Clark possibly try and squeeze up the inside and make a move. He's made a hole, he's made a gap up the inside past Rory Smith, and that is up into 4th place. And if he's got momentum, Ross Martin may also squeeze down the outside also. He tries this move a lap ago on James Clark, and he tries to do the same on Rory Smith, but again, he's not far enough alongside to make it happen. So some excellent racing going on here in the final few stages of this first race of the day here on the Sunday of this weekend at Brands Hatch. Race 2 of the weekend for the National Formula Ford. That's not over yet, because we've still got Jonathan Brown with Spike Colbecker also giving him what for, up through Surtees into McLaren. Ross Martin's also not finished either. He's on the back of Rory Smith, and in a little bit of no man's land appears to be James Clark, because he's pulled away a little bit from battle for 5th, but he's just off the back of the top 3 unless he can start to close in on the pit straight. Down the pit straight, down towards Paddock Hill Bend, and again McLennan doesn't feel comfortable taking the racing line. He has to stick to the inside to prevent any kind of an advance or an attack from Jonathan Brown. Colbeck is in there as well. He tries to squeeze back up the inside of his teammate, but Jonathan Brown rather rudely shuts the door in his face and says, don't think so, Spike. P2 is mine if you don't mind. You couldn't get past Neil. Now it's my turn. Look at this. Jonathan Brown's caught up as well. So once again, the seething mob from Ireland are on Neil McLennan's tail. They come back towards Surtees once again. We are in the closing stages of race 2 of the weekend. Neil McLennan hasn't got long to hold on here, but he has to keep on holding on, as Cliff Dempsey's trio are stacking up behind him to try and make this move happen. Here comes James Clark. He fancies to go at his teammate Spike Colbecker, who in turn is trying to keep with Jonathan Brown, who in turn is going after Neil McLennan as they come across the line to start the last lap of the race. Down the outside into Paddock Hill Bend. Spike Colbecker goes defensive on the inside for 3rd place. Brown's looking for the undercut on the exit for the lead on McLennan on the run towards Druids. But out of Paddock Hill Bend, under the bridge and up towards the hairpin. They're all closing up under braking. It is almost a 16-wheeled Formula Ford. Rory Smith and also Ross Martin are in the mix as well. But down to Graham Hill Bend for the last time. And Neil McLennan has fended off attack after attack after attack from these 3 cars behind, and still none of them could make him move. Up through Surtees in for the final time. There's only a couple of corners to go for Neil McLennan to take another victory, but Cliff Dempsey's boys will push him all the way to the line. Out through Clark Curve for the last time. This is going to be a drag race, so you can possibly get to the line first. Clark is moving in to try and make a move on Colbecker as they head up towards the checkered flag. Jonathan Brown moves out, but it will be too late. And Neil McLennan wins race 2 here at Brands Hatch, just from the trio of Cliff Dempsey cars. It's McLennan who wins, Brown in second with Colbecker and Clark, Smith and Martin in the top 6. The top 6 covered by 1.2 seconds. How about that for a classic Formula Ford race? Jings and Sharp, Thorburn and Maserati round out the top 10. From Quinn down Quartermain, Huntley, Chart, Woods and Michael McPherson we sadly lost in the early stages. Another classic Formula Ford race. Here's Lloyd on the podium with our top three, including a very pleased Neil McLennan, more points towards his championship charge.
Neil, great race. Pretty much controlled that from the start. A lot going on behind you, though.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. No, we got a good start. We're hoping to try pick off Spike at the start as well, but it didn't happen. So a few laps in, we managed to get Spike going into Druids. And then all I could do then is keep the head down and go. But no, that didn't really work out. I still had Jonathan and Spike and a few other guys behind me still trying to battle. So I was looking in my mirrors all the time and blocking all the time, you know. So it was stressful, but no, we're glad to get the win.
One of those races where you're constantly looking in your mirror.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And reverse grid for the next race is from 7th, so that's going to put you quite some way back. Do you reckon you can come through the field?
Hopefully, we'll certainly try our best. You know, it has been so close this weekend, so it's going to be tough, but we'll certainly give it a try.
Well, we look forward to seeing you out there, but congratulations on your victory.
Thank you very much, cheers.
John, that was some epic overtaking, and how close was that across the line?
Well, I think the overtakes were closer than the actual finish, but yeah, some of the moves were on the limit. So, you know, I had trust in other drivers. So, I said yesterday I'm just going to send it today, and I did. So, I think I started from 6th again the next race. So, I have to do the same again.
Well, yeah, you've certainly proved your point. If you can do the same again, that's got to be some good racing and some good silverware to come away with from the weekend.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. I'm feeling like a party pizza right now. Everything's just great. So hopefully we'll go home happy tonight. And look, I don't know what else to say. It's just been it was a great race, great fun. So we'll see.
Well, we look forward to seeing you out there. Congratulations on your 2nd place.
Thank you.
Spike, great start, but Neil managed to catch up with you, and then the midfield battle there for sort of 2nd, 3rd, 4th. A lot of dicing going on, very close racing. Talk us through it from your point of view.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting race. A lot of fighting, a lot more than a lot more than I'd like. Kind of just wanted to pull away there, but racing doesn't always go your way, and it was a little bit too close for comfort at some times. But everyone kept it fairly clean and ended up with a podium position, which is good for the points. And we still got one more later on.
That's it. You're still ahead of Ross in that race, so good points. The trouble is that he now starts in front of you for the final race of the weekend. What can you do about that?
Well, I'm gonna have to first force my way past him if I get the chance. No more nice guy in these end of the end of the season. It's where it really matters.
Well, we wish you all the best out there, but congratulations on your 3rd place. Great racing out there, and we look forward to seeing you out there later on.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Well, it's the final race in the Avon Tyres National Formula Ford 1600 Championship, and we're just going to have a quick word with current championship leader Ross Martin. Ross, fantastic weekend at Croft, although Brands hasn't quite been as good for you so far.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a mixed one. I'd say our pace has been strong, but yesterday I did struggle in that white race and I did make a slight mistake, which I felt the punish for. But yeah, I came back through strong in that heat there. Starting P2 here in the front row, I've just got to try and make a good start and see where it goes. But yeah, I'm happy with my pace to drive, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, you certainly picked up some good places in that last race, and as you say, starting at the front now, P2, because of the reverse grid, that's got to put you in a good position.
Yeah, try to look after the car, bring it home, and hopefully get some good strong points to the championship.
Yeah, and that's got to be the aim of the game. We'll let you carry on with your preparations for the race. Good luck out there, Ross. It's been great chatting to you. It's over to Scott to take you through all of the action.
So, 2 different winners in 2 races. Are we about to make it 3 from 3? Well, race 1 podium finisher Aaron Jeanson could from pole, but Ross Martin, crucially, is on the front row alongside him. Smith and Clark on row 2 from Colbecker and Brown on row 3. McLennan and Jamie Sharp on the 4th row, and the top 10 completed by Max Maserati and Jamie Thorburn. Then Morgan Quinn and Jason Down, Adam Quartermain and Scott Huntley, Henry Chart and Nicole Woods on row 8. And then Micah McPherson, as virtue of his retirement earlier on, sees him start at the back of the grid in 17th place. So after rain in race 1, overcast conditions in race 2, it's bright sunshine for race number 3. Let's see if Jeanson can win from pole, or if possible this man Ross Martin can redeem himself after what's been by his standards a poor weekend. We're underway in racing for race number 3 here at Brands Hatch with the National Formula Fords, and immediately going to the outside line to try and take the lead goes Ross Martin, but it is going to be the young American Aaron Jeanson who will lead the way through Paddock Hill Bend for the first time, up towards Druids, everyone jostling for position on the run, and look to the outside line, that's Rory Smith looking for the lead down the outside of Druids, goes side by side with Martin. Clark throws himself into the mix, it's still 3 abreast on the exit, as Clark finds himself on the outside of Smith, who was on the AstroTurf on the exit of Druids, but he slots his way through into 3rd place now. Clark down to 4th, and Neil McLennan is into 5th position ahead of this man, Spike Colbecker. The young American is in 6th place. So plenty of action in the first few corners already in this 3rd and final race of the weekend here at Brands Hatch. Because after this, they will go across to Kirkistown in Northern Ireland, then they'll head off to Silverstone, and then back here to Brands Hatch for the finale in September, a month before the Formula Ford Festival, and that's where the title could be decided. But right now, the lead could be decided into turn 1, into Paddock Hill Bend on lap 2. It's 3 abreast for 3rd behind them almost. As Ross Martin looks for the lead on the inside of Aaron Jeanson, looks for the switcheroo, the switch back on the inside line, which he's pulled off to perfection. There's nothing that Aaron Jeanson can do except let Martin have the inside line, and the championship leader is into the lead, crucially in race number 3 here, and that's exactly what he was looking for after finishing 10th in race 1 and 6th in race 2, and it could be 2nd place for Rory Smith if they're not careful. They almost make contact, but Smith gets 2 wheels up the inside of the curb, and now here comes James Clark, and he's waving to Rory Smith saying, come on, don't battle me, let's go and catch the top 2, let's keep after Ross Martin. So he's got through, he feels he's the quicker of the 2 cars in that tandem. A little sideways moment on the apex there through clearways for James Clark, but he knows he means business now, and again he's waving, come on, let's get on with it, let's chase after the guys in front. Spike Colbecker now looks at the gearbox of Neil McLennan, who's a couple of car lengths ahead. Now we head down into Paddock Hill Bend, and still, incredibly, Jeanson holds on to 2nd place, but this man, James Clark, will try and pick him off as quick as he can. Wide over the curbs there for Jeanson, but he's kept the momentum nicely on the run into Druids. That man in front, Ross Martin, is in exactly the position he needs to be if he wants to keep himself in prime position for the 2019 National Championship. He's been fighting so hard. Of course, he came up through karting. He was part of the Racing Stars Formula Kart Stars incentive in Formula 4, but then that drive fell through, sadly, so he switched back to Formula Fords. He's been a Scottish champion, he's been a race winner at national level. He's had a couple of years struggling in Formula Fords, but this year, joining Team Dolan, everything appears to have come right for him. He leads the championship, of course, with this weekend still to finish and then 3 more weekends to go. And possibly it's starting to get into contention for him to maybe take the 2019 title if it all works out his way. It's not working out James Clark's way at the moment, though. He's still stuck behind Aaron Jeanson, but he's going to try and pull off exactly the same move that Martin did on the exit of Paddock Hill Bend, the run to Druids, and indeed he does, into the apex at the right hand at the top of the hill. And just as Martin had a couple of laps ago, it's up the inside with the switchback, the undercut on the exit of Paddock Hill Bend to get through into 2nd place. And it could have been 3rd place for Neil McLennan if Jeanson had left the door open even wider, because they're all stacking up behind him now. McLennan and Rory Smith and this man Spike Colbecker are in the mix. Jonathan Brown's in there too, and Jamie Sharp as well, the ex-Formula 4 racer, another man like Ross Martin who has raced at British F4 level. He's dropped back into Formula 4s here and still learning quite a lot in his first full season, and his Formula 4 debut at Anglesey at the Winter Series rounds in November, and that was in the same car that Ross Martin currently drives. He's now looking for 3rd place. Up the inside there goes Neil McLennan, and Aaron Jeanson must be thinking, goodness sake guys, leave me alone on the exit of Paddock Hill Bend, let me drive my race. And he forces the issue this time, squeezes to the inside line to prevent any kind of move from McLennan. Smith and Clark starts to close back in again. And down the hill towards Hill Bend once more. Smith closing up now. Lots of race winners in this pack. McLennan's been a race winner, so is Brown, so is Colbecker, so is Rory Smith. So lots of experienced drivers here, you know exactly what it takes to win a race. Aaron Jeanson, of course, got his first podium in 3rd place the day before, but he might do it this time. Buys up the inside, goes Neil McLennan. This might have opened the floodgates, because up the inside to lose 1 and lose possibly 2 places comes Aaron Jeanson. Rory Smith is going to pull to the inside line, gets the bump draft yet again, this time from Jonathan Brown on the sprint towards Paddock Hill Bend, and Jeanson has lost 1, 2, almost 3 spots. It could be 4 if he's not careful through Paddock Hill Bend. We're on board with Spike Colbecker. Oh, it's more than that, because there goes Aaron Jeanson onto the gravel trap on the exit of Paddock Hill Bend. He ran way too wide, and that may have been expected. And now to the outside comes Jamie Sharp. And Spike Colbecker looks across and thinks, who the hell are you? Where have you come from? Wasn't expecting to see Jamie Sharp making that such a brave dive into the hairpin. But Jamie Sharp looks like his pace is here to stay. He did set the fastest lap of the race in race 1 yesterday in the wet conditions. So he's certainly got some pace about him, but he has been getting stronger and stronger as the weekend goes on. Of course, one of the main people who like to help out Team Dolan from time to time is one of their main alumni, Niall Murray, of course, which is the former car of which that Ross Martin currently drives. It's the Van Diemen 1999, which seems to be such a superbly put together car. It helped Niall Murray to 2 titles and a festival victory as well, and it's also helped him for more drivers to get into the mix. We see now Rory Smith to run wide on the exit of Paddock Hill Bend. Now it's combat between the 2 teammates, with Brown on the outside of Colbeck and Gard the inside. Oh, and it's happened! Finally the 2 teammates have touched. I think possibly Cliff Dempsey and White was dreading that to happen, but finally the 2 teammates have made a collision. They banged wheels, but they both seem to have gotten away with it pretty well. On the exit of Graham Hill Bend, on the sprint now towards 30s they go. And all this battling is only going to let the top 3 get away here, because there he goes, Spike Colbecker, followed by Rory Smith, then Jonathan Brown, then Jamie Sharp. You can see there that the road now goes Neil McLennan, but the top 2 are pretty much away and gone. Ross Martin has got quite a commanding lead at the front of the field. James Clark still holds 2nd place. Now Neil McLennan, of course, thanks to all this squabbling behind for 4th place downwards, is really helping him out, and he's bid for the final podium place. I guess Jonathan Brown looking down the outside. Here's a view from Max Maserati. He's now into combat now, but that's Jamie Thorburn inside of him. He's knocked him wide onto the edge of the gravel track, into the barriers. That looked like a pretty severe hit on the left rear. And that car is stationary and going no further. Now that may well be a safety car for Max Maserati. And it looks as though he was forced wide on the exit. Didn't expect Jamie Thorburn to make such a dive up the inside line. I think Thorburn just trying to take his line, didn't realise that Max Maserati was still there. And it left the former Clio Junior racer with no room to go. Now the car is stranded half on the circuit and half on the grass. That surely must prompt at the very least a safety car, which will bunch the field up once again, and it will neutralise the advantage that Ross Martin has, and indeed it has. Safety car has been deployed here at Brands Hatch for the first time this weekend in National Formula Fords. And there is Max Maserati's car, I think, with bent right rear suspension. There's the safety car, mobilised from its perch, shall we say, at the escape road of Graham Hill Bend. Will pick up this man, Ross Martin. So you will see the BMW safety car as it just makes its way there onto the circuit. Lights ablaze. And Ross Martin's lead that he managed to build up in that first part of the race will now be completely evaporated. And it now gives a chance for James Clark and co to close back in. And McLennan might also fancy his 2nd win of the weekend if he gets an opportunity. So the field will now close up here behind the BMW safety car. It's Ross Martin in the lead then. It's James Clark in 2nd place, followed by Neil McLennan in 3rd. And let's look at the rest of the order as they come past the pits here in a moment. It looks as though it's Spike Colbecker in 4th place. Rory Smith is now 5th. Jonathan Brown in 6th position. Jamie Sharp in 7th. Jamie Thorburn in the Border Reivers run car in 8th. Max Maserati, sadly, he was leading the clubman category, which is for the more sort of enthusiast drivers or younger drivers that might not have so much experience in Formula 4 but they're not ready to go up into the pro class just yet. There's Scott Huntley in the car number 3. He's in one of the Cliff Dempsey chassis. That's the chassis that's normally run by Brendan Lee, but I think that car's been taken over by Scott for this weekend. There's the stricken car of Max Maserati, just giving a wave to the marshals there, saying everything's all good. Now here's the replay here. We're going to go on board with Max Maserati. He's fighting away at the wheel on the exit of Clark curve onto the pit straight. Look in the mirror, just on the left-hand side mirror, the car behind him. There is Jamie Thorburn just creeping up behind him. So Max Maserati holds to the inside line. Thorburn now goes out of shot because he's diving up to our right now, up to the inside line, into Paddock Hill. But there is Jamie Thorburn, moves across, and just keeps on moving across, and into the gravel truck goes Max. And he almost avoided the barrier, but the left rear just caught the end of that sort of tetracell barrier, and unfortunately the contact has damaged the left rear of the car, it seems, and away he goes. Now either there's too much damage for the car to carry on, or we may have even stalled the engine, because we did see a shot of the car at a slightly raised angle, and it looked as though that if there was any damage it was possibly minimal, but seemingly enough maybe that we can't see, which has allowed that car to end up where it is, unfortunately immobile and unable to continue, which is a shame because Max was having such a good comeback to the championship after a couple of weekends away, but it's good to see him back at the wheel of his Team Dolan Van Diemen. Of course, he's one of a few drivers in the Team Dolan stable. Of course, they run Ross Martin and Jamie Sharp, and they also run Morgan Quinn, who is a former Junior racer who stepped into Formula Ford for the first time this season. There is Morgan on the right-hand side, I think. But Ross Martin looking very relaxed behind the safety car, even with his hands barely on the wheel as he heads up towards Paddock Hill Bend in Druids. Just flexing his fingers, making give him a bit of a stretch. Taking it nice and steady, nice and keeping cool and relaxed. I think that's what he needs to do after what's been a very testing weekend for Ross. It's been a very character-building weekend in more ways than one. He, as we mentioned, struggled with the setup in race 1 in the wet conditions, made a few mistakes, which are very uncharacteristic of Ross. He's certainly has come of age this season in a car that really does befit that of someone who's looking to get championship status. He's better fortunes in race 2 by picking his way up to 6th position, and of course the reverse grid draw certainly worked in his favour because he pulled out number 7, which meant that Aaron Jeanson started on pole. Of course, with the top 7 reversed, it meant that Ross Martin could start on the front row, and it didn't take him long, did it? Only a lap and a bit to squeeze past Aaron Jeanson. And Aaron's mistake on the exit of Paddock Hill Bend when he ran over the gravel trap means that he's dropped way down the order. See if we can spot him down the order. There's Jamie Sharp in 7th. There's 8th place for Jason Downs in there as well, as is course made. There, I think, is the machine of Aaron Jeanson back in about 10th or 11th place. So that's how much the mistake cost him after he ran wide and let the floodgates open. So cars make their way down the pit straight. Again, weaving from side to side. For those who are unsure why they do this, it's simply just to get as much heat and pressure into the tyres and also into the brakes as much as they can, because they'll be working the brakes as well to get them to as optimal a temperature and pressure range as possible, so when they go back racing once again, they're not doing so in cold brakes or cold tyres, and they don't approach Paddock Hill Bend in such a state that means when they hit the pedal or turn the car, the back end will simply step around or the car will understeer wide off into the gravel trap, and of course means that they will be out of the race, or at least their race will be severely compromised if they can track their way through without getting too stuck. Moving from side to side. Now he effectively becomes the safety car. He has to choose when he wants to put his foot down and get this race underway again, just stacking the field up nicely. He's got James Clark right underneath him, possibly looking for that first National Formula Ford win. This is one of the best chances he's had all season. Can he get a good jump on the restart here to usurp Ross Martin and get the lead? Well, he's decided now. Ross has thought, right, come on you lot, let's get this race back underway. Puts his foot down on the apex of McLaren. They return their way through Clark Curve and onto the pit straight. Green flag in the air, and we're back to racing at Brands Hatch. And immediately, the top 2 have made a great restart. McLaren's tried to go with them in 3rd place. There's a scrap on immediately for 4th between Jonathan Brown and Rory Smith. And Smith has got designs on 4th place on Spike Kohlbecker. So they're up to their old antics again on the restart. And Smith defends the inside line, squeezes Brown out to head up towards Druids. And down the outside once again, it's that man Jamie Sharp looking for a move. And oops, onto the gravel trap. That's Nicole Woods. Into the gravel trap, where they do say safety cars breed safety cars, and possibly that could be as a consequence of maybe, as we talked about, not keeping her tyres and brakes as warm as possible, because it looks as though she skated off the road into the gravel trap. It looks pretty beached in the sand down there at the apex of turn 1, and that may well be another safety car. So only about a lap's worth of racing before we get the field neutralised once again. There's a couple of spots of rain on the camera as well, possibly, but Nicole Woods jumping out of the car, and indeed so in just quick succession. It's the 2nd safety car of the race already, so we've barely completed 1 lap on the restart, and we are back at reduced pace once again. The field is neutralised, so the onlooking spectators will be hoping for a bit of a sprint finish to this race, and certainly going to get one, because there's not long to go in this race as James Clark immediately gets into tyre warming mode, just playing with the throttle through the apex of Druids to get some heat into the rear tyres. There is Nicole Wood. You can see the tracks through the gravel as to where her car went in. Looks as though she simply lost the back end and got at the middle of the corner and gone in directly backwards. Because if the car slides sideways into the gravel trap, there is the evident possibility of the car pitching itself upside down or into a roll. That's not a nice thing to think about, obviously, and we don't wish that at all, but it's obviously a danger of the gravel traps. Even though they do tend to stop cars pretty quickly, you catch a gravel trap at the wrong angle, and it could be the worst mistake you'll make. There's a bit of gravel on the exit there of McLaren and Clearways. Of course, that is a slightly slower speed corner, so you can, of course, get away with going through there a little bit slower and not having that evident risk, whereas Paddock Hill Bend is a much more high-speed corner. You approach it coming down the Jack Brabham straight and you pile in down the hill, you carry the momentum all the way through the apex of the corner, and right at the bottom of the hill in the compression, that's exactly where you can get it wrong. So it looks as though that Nicole Woods, and what you have to remember is her first weekend here at Brands Hatch. Certainly learnt a lot about the circuit, but it's also her first season in Formula Ford. She usually competes with horses, so excuse the pun, but a different kind of horsepower. She switched from the saddle to the racing seat and gone behind the wheel of a Formula Ford. And Formula Ford really still is one of those categories where you can learn an awful lot about car control, racecraft, setup. It is a very basic, or back to basics type race car. No wonder it was such a popular formula for over 50 years, and still is for some drivers coming up through the ranks. So thankfully the marshals have managed to clear away Nicole Woods' car pretty quickly, so brilliant work as ever by our fantastic British marshals, volunteers and recovery crews to get the race hopefully back underway as quickly as possible. I think the lights are out on the safety car once again, so the safety car speeds off up the road, and it's now restart for race 3, take 2 this time. So Ross Martin now will have a second chance to get a good restart, but also it's a second chance for James Clark and co behind him to possibly try and get a jump on the Scotsman on the run towards Paddock Hill Bend. There's not long left in the race, there's only a few minutes to go, so Ross Martin only has to hold on for a little while longer as he puts his foot down and decides to get this race back underway through Clark Curve. And yet again, as it was on the first restart, it is a cracking go with James Clark as Ross Martin goes down the pit strip with James Clark on his tail. Green flag back in the air for our third time at this restart. And into Paddock Hill Bend once again, and Clark is there. This is the best chance he's had all weekend so far. He tries the Ross Martin undercut as he goes up towards Paddock Hill Bend. Further back with Spike Colbecker looking up the inside of Neil McLennan, just about gets himself stopped into the apex at Druids before he ran into the back of Neil McLennan. Look at this, the train nose to tail on the run down towards Graham Hill Bend, looking up the inside for second place is McLennan. James Clark shuts the door because McLennan realised he wasn't far enough alongside to make that happen. So here is the view from James Clark. That's the view he has, staring at the gearbox of Ross Martin up through the left-hander at Surtees into McLaren, the apex of Clearways at the top of the hill, and then all the way they arc through Clark Curve. James Clark will stay in that slipstream on the run down the pit straight towards Paddock Hill Bend, once again on the restart. Not long to go in this race, as we mentioned. It really is going to be a sprint finish here, and McLennan and also Colbecker are going with them. Here comes James Clark again, closing in through the apex. They sweep down to the bottom of the hill, through the compression, up to hill towards Druids. Jonathan Brown now has an attack on Rory Smith down the outside line. We're watching the top four scrap amongst each other. I think there was a bit of contact there between Spike Colbecker and Neil McLennan, because the Spectrum got a little bit sideways through the second part of the apex through Druids corner. So I think there's a bit of pushing going on. Speaking of pushing, look at James Clark. He's as close as he's ever been now, under racing speeds through Surtees. He really wants to try and force the issue here and force Ross Martin into mistake. And here goes McLennan diving up the inside. He's caught him completely napping on the apex of the right-hander at Clearways. And now it's a sprint race between the two of them for second place, but of course all it's going to do is give Martin the advantage to pull away in front. And look at Spike Colbecker, tucked under the gearbox of Neil McLennan, looking to it. It's almost 3 abreast into the right-hander, and James Clark will lose not 1 but 2 places into Paddock Hill Bend. That small mistake, all caused by Neil McLennan, forcing his way up the inside line, and seeing McLennan go from third to second. Spike Colbecker take the final podium place, and James Clark will try and fight back around the outside of his teammate. There's almost a little bit of contact. Clark's over the AstroTurf, over the curbs, but he holds on to what is now 4th place, with Smith and Brown stacking up behind him. So 6 drivers going for the podium once again. Colbecker's up to 3rd. Clark gives a little bit of a nudge in the tail, saying, "I'm still here, Spike." And now it's Neil McLennan's chance. It is Scotland versus Scotland at the front, but the Cliff Dempsey cars plus Rory Smith and Jamie Sharp and Jamie Thorburn at the back of that grid group. Watch for him in the Border Reavers car. They're all closing in here in the closing stages. Down the pit straight, they hug the inside line, the tightest line towards Paddock Hill Bend. It's now the last lap of the race, and McLennan feels it's now or never. Looking to the outside line, but the 3 Cliff Dempsey cars are closing up as well. Into Paddock Hill Bend, they swing through the right-hander, through Hellwood Hill, up towards Druids, and Martin's going defensive. He's not comfortable. Clark goes down the outside of his teammate Colbecker, and Possum McLennan down the outside into Druids. But Clark has got the move done on the outside for 3rd place. Colbecker's back to 4th, or is he? Has a look up the inside into Graham Hill Bend, but he can't get through, so Clark at least will still get back onto the podium, but once again he will have to wait for that first victory. Jonathan Brown, meanwhile, is on the back of Rory Smith, looking at the back of his exhaust, but in towards clearways for the final time. Ross Martin's had such a torrid weekend. He was 10th in the first race after a poor setup choice in race 1. He was 6th in race 2, but finally he's back where he belongs, onto the run to the pit straight. He will take yet another win to another step closer to the championship title. It is race victory for Ross Marsden in race 3 at Brands Hatch. In fantastic fashion, it is Marsden who wins. McLaren second from Clark, Colbecker, Smith, Brown, Sharp and Thorburn. The top 8 covered by 1.8 seconds. That is typical fantastic Formula Ford racing for you. Quartermain and down round up the top 10 from Jeanston, Huntley, and then our 5 retirements including Morgan Quinn and Max Maserati. What a fantastic way to end the weekend. Here's Lloyd with the top 3 on the podium.
Ross, when we spoke to you before the race, you seemed to have a lot of confidence in the car, and that was an unbelievable performance, particularly to keep the guys behind you.
Yeah, I knew I had good drive pace. Yes, I did struggle a bit in the wet, but I came home and I thought, well, this is today to do it. And, you know, starting taking in the reverse grid, I thought, well, I've got a good chance here. So managed to get by Aaron, and again, 5-6 laps out front, I showed my pace and had a gap. But yeah, I think going into Kirkuson, I'll definitely be looking for more podiums. You know, consistency is key in a championship, and I think finishing 10th some days isn't good enough. So yeah, I'll definitely be pushing harder in Kirkuson.
Yeah, well, we look forward to seeing you out there. Safety car played a bit of a role as well today. Is that something that that you feel sort of damaged your race a little bit?
Yeah, I had a good gap, but you know, James is quick, and you know, I knew he'd end up catching me. But I think consistency is key. I mean, my lap times were good there, and I think, you know, the gap could have stayed similar. But again, you've got a long few laps after that. You know, I think 18 laps was the last heat. So yeah, 10. I think they added 5 minutes on when I looked in the board, so I thought it was going to be a long race. And then another safety car came out, which cut short the race. But yeah, it was intense. It was very hard at the end. You know, 3 laps defending these fast guys. It was enjoyable, tense, nervous, everything. But yeah, so glad to come home with a win.
Very well, congratulations, and we look forward to seeing you next time out.
Thank you very much, guys. Cheers.
Neil, great second place. Lots of action going on out there, particularly over the last couple of laps, even with the safety car.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Yeah, it was very close. Can't thank the team enough for all the great work they've done. It's been a very tough weekend. But no, that last race there, it was very close to James and Ross towards the end. A few safety cars which kind of helped me catch them up a bit more. But no, we're just glad to get our second and a win, and well, 2 seconds and a win. It's been good.
Yeah, been a great weekend for you. Has helped with the championship as well, I guess. And looking forward to Kyrgyzstan next.
Yeah, Kyrgyzstan will be a good one. Spectrums are quick there, so hopefully we'll have a good weekend.
Brilliant. Well, I'll let you go because I know you've got a flight to catch, but congratulations once again.
Spot on, thank you very much. Cheers.
James, bitter disappointment, and I guess in some ways the safety car could have played into your hands, but in other ways it didn't.
The first one did. It wasn't, you know, it's only me that's, it's not the safety car, was it? It was me that sort of let it slip. No, I mean, third's still a good result, and it's just disappointing because the car was better than the fourth and the third today, and I feel like we probably should have done better than that, and yeah, I only really have myself to blame, and it hurts more. You know, when you know it's something that you could have controlled, it hurts quite a lot more. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not an easy situation to be in, James, but hopefully you can go away, bounce back, and take the lessons on for the next race at Kyrgyzstan.
Yeah, I'll need to bounce back, but yeah, we'll come back stronger, and we'll give it a good go at Kyrgyzstan.
That's it. Yeah, that's all you can do. Go out there and give it your best, and you know, that was tough racing out there today, so take that with you on board because it wasn't an easy race.
Yeah, no, it was a fantastic race, and you know, just thanks to everyone at Cliff Dempsey Racing, Neil Bold Engines and Ray Race Cars, because the car should have won that race, and it arguably probably certainly should have got a podium, if not a win in the previous race as well. So yeah.
Yeah, not an easy day, but take it on board, and we'll see you next time out. But congratulations on your third place.
Thank you.